Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight we'll continue covering the Analects by Confucius. We're on book 14, chapter 31, and we will have one reading or two readings by your favorite translation, and then we'll go to Jason's translation and open it up for comments subsequent to that. We ask that you keep your comments to the text, and we will have time at the end for a more broad discussion. So with that, would anybody like to read their favorite version of the Analects? Joy, go right ahead.
Okay, yes, 1431, right?
That's correct.
31,
32, 33, and 34.
Okay. The master say, if you don't try to anticipate deception and you don't plan for your not being believed, yet are the first to be aware of these things, aren't you worthy? 1432. Wei Shen Mu say to Confucius, why are you so busy running around from place to place? Is it not that you be a flatterer? Confucius say, I wouldn't dare practice flattering. It is just that I despise stubbornness. 1433, the master say, a really excellent horse is called such not simply because of its physical strength, but because of its character. 1434, someone say, what do you think of the saying, repay harm with virtue? Confucius reply, then how will you repay virtue? Repay harm with justice and repay virtue with virtue. This is a translation from Charles Muller.
Thank you so much, Joy. Penny, would you like to read the Leggy version?
Sure,
It's quite different. It's interesting.
Yeah, okay. Verse 31. The master said, he who does not anticipate attempts to deceive him, nor think beforehand of his not being believed, and yet apprehends these things readily when they occur, is he not a man of superior worth? 32. Wei Shumu said to Confucius, Chu, how is it that you keep roosting about? Is it not that you are an insinuating talker? Confucius said, I do not dare to play the part of such a talker, but I hate obstinacy. 33. The master said, a horse is called chi not because of its strength, but because of its other qualities. 34. Someone said, what do you say concerning the principle that injury should be recompensed with kindness? The master said, with what then would you recompense kindness? Recompense injury with justice and recompense kindness with kindness.
Thank you, Penny. And now we'll go to
Jason, I don't know if you know you're muted.
Oh yeah, I just noticed that myself.
Did you see the
We can see it now. Yeah, you're on
the right track, right? So we will have among read, then explanation, and then I will continue. So that's
Okay.
Okay.
Book 14, verse 31. The master say, don't anticipate that others deceive you. Don't guess that others do not believe you, but sense these in advance. This is worthy. 32. The hermit, Wei Shangmu, said to Confucius, "Qiu, why are you busily running around? Are you not eloquent?" Confucius said, "I dare not be eloquent, though I just despise some stubborn ignorance." 33. The master said, "A steed is not to be praised for its strength, but for its virtue." 34. Someone said, to repay complaints with virtue, how would that be?" The master said, "Then what do you repay for virtue? Repay complaints with uprightness. Repay virtue with virtue."
So Amang, you want to say something? Then you go first.
Oh, I was going to let you go first. Yeah, I'll read, you comment, I'll comment after.
Okay. So 31, how should I say? Okay, so let's start from 32. Okay, 32, 微生母. Okay, so one thing we notice, okay, the way the 微生母, okay, must be Confucius' friend, because he called Confucius Chu. Okay, that's the given name. Okay, no one dare to call Confucius Chu, except Confucius himself. He will say himself, call himself Chu, but he will call Confucius Chu. That means he is Confucius' friend, must be an old friend. So he is a Taoist. I don't know if he's a philosopher or not, but basically he is. We're asking Confucius, why are you busily running around? So the word here called xi, that's a strange word, but basically it means like the birds, if you see the sparrow, okay, resting on the tree. So basically they are restless, right? They have to keep making noise. That's why he said, ask Confucius, why you are so busy running around? Okay, and the Confucius' answer is interesting. His answer is, I'm not eloquent, okay, though I just despise some stubborn ignorance, because somebody will not change their mind. So Confucius had to keep changing this word, okay. So this one will be very similar to later on, okay, about 150 or 200 years later, Mencius, okay. He is so argumentative. He said, I'm not argumentative. I was no choice but be argumentative. Okay, so that's the same situation, and that's the interaction between Confucius' Taoist friend and himself. 33, the master said, a steed is not praised for his strength, but for his virtue. Okay, so the word here use virtue, and the Muller's translation call it character. And we will discuss this, okay? But in Confucius' point of view, the virtue is character, it's acquired character. Okay, so a steed, a good horse, not we say he is good, not because of his strength or his capability, but his virtue. So this one is very typical Confucius doctrine. Okay, the virtue is more important than capability. So in Chinese, called 才. Okay, that means you are capable to do something, which is less important than 德, which is your virtue. 34. Someone said to repay complaint with virtue, because they use the same word. That's why I would not, even character is a good word on 33, but I will still keep the word virtue, because that's the same word, or called 德. And if you recall 道德经, it's the same word, 德, the second word. So someone said, okay, there must be quote from somebody. To repay complaint with virtue. Okay, how will that be? That's as Confucius. But to repay complaint with virtue, this word is from 道德经 in chapter 63. It said, regardless of what is large, small, many, or few, repay complaint with virtue. That's the teaching from Lao Tzu, the 道德经. So somebody asked Confucius, how about this? Okay, he didn't say 道德经 said, he just said, repay complaint with virtue. How will that be? And Confucius said, what do you repay for virtue, right? So basic Confucius' point is, if you repay virtue with complaint, if somebody have virtue to you, what are you? So I think that's Confucius. So here you can see 33, 34, and 32. Okay, you will see the strong contrast between Taoist and the Confucian. Confucian is different, right? In the Taoist point of view, you don't have, if somebody are stubborn and then this word is difficult, you just don't have to worry so much. Okay, and the same thing, if somebody complain, you just always repay with virtue. But in Confucius' point of view, it's different, because you have to repay upright, okay, with complaint, repay virtue with virtue. Okay. If you know something is difficult to change, you still have to work and to change the world, or change to bring your ideas to this world. Okay, so I'll stop here and I give to Amma.
Thank you, Jason. And to quote, oh, so many of my students, I feel attacked. This is definitely the most focused attack against Taoist ideals, Taoist thoughts, Taoist tenets and precepts. And even that 31 begins the salvo in a very subtle way. When it says, don't anticipate others deceiving you. One of the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching, Dao Ke Dao, Fei Cheng Dao, Ming Kang Ming, Fei Chang Ming. You cannot trust words to actually convey a reality. That's the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching. In other words, from a Confucian interpretation, words are a tool that just deceive us. And what Confucius' answer to that is, you shouldn't anticipate that others will deceive you. That's acting in bad faith. If you have a sense of it, that's all right. That could be worthy. But don't second guess that people's words are just ways of hiding the truth. I'm not saying that's what the Taoist interpretation of that is, but I do get the feeling from that passage that is what the Confucian interpretation is aiming at or driving at. And then bringing in an exemplar in Wei Shangmu to talk to Confucius about being busy. You know, you're too active, you're doing too much, you are not, participating in non-action, you are action, and that's got to wear you out. Why are you just trying to be a show-off? Are you trying to prove your eloquence, your bona fides? And he's saying, no, I just despise ignorance. So the Confucian argument about why be proactive, if you will, is that is the route to snuffing out ignorance in people. If you aren't actively trying to snuff out ignorance, you're going to, if not remain in it, then backslide towards it. 33, again, here you see that direct salvo in Dao De Qing. De is the center word in that title of that text. And here is I'd almost call it a missive on De, where he's saying De isn't about what a creature has, just what it's born with. It's what we describe as what they have gained. You know, a steed is not the same as a wild stallion. A steed is something you can ride. It has been broken. It has been groomed. It has been honed. A wild stallion may be just as strong, but you don't praise it for that strength. It's not useful to you. And the idea of repaying complaint with virtue, like Jason said, directly out of the Tao Te Ching, it does beg the question. These do not feel like authentic comments from the master's lips, quote unquote, at least not all of them. They seem to be, after the development of the ideas of Taoism, a rebuttal to those ideas that could easily be post hoc added to the Analects to make a solid case that no, your ideas were not what the master was espousing. In fact, he said some things probably very close to this, but we can shape them in a way that really drive the point home and pierce holes in your argument.
Thank you, Juan. So now, does anybody have any questions or comments regarding any of the passages that we've actually covered? Penny, followed by Juan.
I have a couple questions just on verse 33. On mine, you know, it said a horse is called a chi, CH apostrophe I. Is that the same as duh in
No,
Chinese?
No, Ji means a good horse. Okay. So a horse is called the translation, Legi's translation. A good horse called Ji. Okay. Because Chinese during that time they have probably, I don't know how many, at least 20 different words for different kind of horse. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So Ji is one kind of horse being tamed, but it's great horse. Okay. So they call Ji. So Confucius say a horse is being called Ji, not because his capability, but his virtue. Okay. So that's very well. Another way is a prime minister, not because his capability to be a prime minister, but his virtue to be the prime minister. A president is not because he's capable to lead the country, but his virtue to lead the country.
And I had one other question then on verse 34, because when it was saying, well, they had said injury instead of complaint in mind, but it said recompense injury with justice. And you had said uprightness is your translation. And uprightness and justice seem different to me, but
yes, I think I think that's Legi's translation, to repay injury with justice, right?
yes,
so,
that was Legi's, yeah.
Legi's translation. I think that kind of, okay, injury, I agree, okay. The words I translate as complaint, okay, the Chinese word called yuan. The reason is I try to keep the word, the meaning translation as complaint, because this word has been used for many places. So I will keep consistent. But in this sentence, it means injure, okay, bad words, complaint, bad mouthing, or doing some slandering. Okay, so that's the means. That's why I keep injure, I believe it's correct. With justice, I disagree, because in our sense, in the Western concept of justice, the repay injury with justice, it's not the, okay, it means what's the Legi's translation? Can you read one more time?
Oh, yeah.
To repay
Recompense injury with justice and recompense kindness with kindness.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think yes. Okay. Confucius refused to repay kindness to injury. He wants use justice to repay injury. Okay, and use kindness to repay kindness. Okay, so I think this translation it get the essence. Okay, and I totally agree. But just word by word is a little bit off. I think that's the reason. Okay, I didn't use Legi's
The
translation.
final question I had based on what you were saying before, when he said recompense, complaint with uprightness, does he mean something like justice, or does he mean, trying to show the person how they should be acting,
Yes,
kind of
I think
like
that's what
setting
he
an
means.
example?
Yes, that's the word. Chinese words called 直 means straight, straightforward. Okay. So remember last week we talked about a word I really like it called 犯. Okay, I translate it as commit, offend. Okay, so that means somebody did something wrong. Okay, not necessarily to you, maybe to your neighbor. Then you
Right.
should be straightforward. You have to straightforward to tell the person you are wrong. Okay, you don't. It was somebody. Okay, great. Okay, so you should straightforward to tell him what's wrong. Okay, you don't just be still nice. Okay, or
Okay.
still doing bit of good to him. I think that's very important.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Because, since it's not like the golden rule or something, I was real curious about what they were
No,
saying.
here is not golden rule. And you probably can tell the attitude of Confucius. Confucius always have different, okay? You don't treat your neighbor's father same as your own
Jason Peng, shut the fuck up, you're Penn Nelson, you're a...
Okay, so we should repay him with straightforward, upright. Okay, kick him out. Okay, we don't be nice to this person. Confucius is very important. Is you treat the bad person and the good person in a different attitude. That's very important. Same as in love. You don't love your friend as much as your brother. Okay, so I think that's to Confucius. That's very important.
Thank you so much for the.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jason. So let's go to Quan, and then I do have a couple of questions about justice in particular, and then we can. I do want to try and finish the chapter, but this is a really interesting couple of passages. So go ahead, Quan.
Wawan also has a hand exclamation in the chat.
Okay, and we'll walk. That's apologies.
Yeah, I
Oh.
think that you explain about the main character is Zhejiang. Zhejiang. Uh, oh oh how can Zhejiang and the master can be related? So I don't know, or I don't know what about the main story about Zhejiang and the master. I think this is the interesting part of the story.
I'm sorry, I didn't get.
Yeah, so what? Could you repeat the question, please?
Or can you point out which chapter you are talking about?
Oh, Zhejiang and the master.
The Zhang you talking about?
Yeah, he put it in the chat.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And the question,
But
Could
here
you-
has no Zhang though. We didn't talk about him now. And I don't see him show up in the book 14. So you probably off in a different chapter, 1.
yes, you might be in a different chapter. I'm trying to think where he could be.
Unless
Yeah.
you were speaking of Zigong. Zigong actually appears right before and right after this, but we'll get
Yeah.
into the relationships, I think, a little bit as we get to those chapter or to the next chapter.
Yes. So Juan, go right ahead.
Okay, so I think that those 4 paragraphs are very interesting because they form a kind of diptych, if you want, meaning a piece of art in 2 pieces. And that the central piece is precisely the command, a fine horse is not praised for its strength, but for its virtue. Okay, and once again, I go back a little bit to my favorite interpretation, the lower trigram and the upper trigram. When he was speaking of the fine horse is not praised for its strength, I think that he was speaking of the lower trigram, but for its virtues, meaning the upper trigram, metaphorically speaking, of course. And if we go back to the paragraph 31, it's another way to say the same thing, because 31 for me is about streetwise, and the other 2 is about wise. Okay, because of course the human animal is not the same than the horse animal. Okay, because at the animal level of the lower trigram, a horse, of course, is primarily useful because it is strong, of course. But for the human animal, what is natural for the human animal is rather the intellect, the capacity to be streetwise, okay? And without anticipating that others are being deceptive, or without guessing that they would not keep faith, yet to sense these things in advance, meaning having a kind of intuition of intellectual capacity to be sensible. So first part, animal kingdom, or lower trigram. And after that, 32, his friend was blaming him a little bit to produce a glib talk. But he said, well, it's more my anxiety about stubborn ignorance, meaning that from that animal kingdom, from that lower trigram, you would not make an effort to go to the upper trigram. And we get to 33, the centerpiece for me. A fine horse is not praised for its strength, for its lower trigram, but for its virtue, once again, metaphorically. And it finished with the fact that if you are truly virtuous, you would be capable to make the fine distinction that you would be straightforward to repay resentment, and you would employ virtue to repay virtue. And that is precisely something more subtle and of the order of the upper trigram, and not only being intuitive or having some sensibility for being streetwise, but it's more than streetwise, it's wise. So he's promoting wisdom, but he's not looking down on being streetwise or street smart for everyday life. We need both. I stop here.
I definitely want to follow up on that. Because the virtue that you're talking about, the way I'm hearing you, would be justice, right?
Yeah, wow, justice, once again, I'm a little bit maniac with the hexagram. Justice is precisely the first timeless form of beauty, translated in everyday life as the inner science of justice. The xian, okay, the fourth layer of the hexagram. And after that, you have ran. And after humanity and valor. And after that, you have wisdom, precisely, which is the timeless form of truth. So justice means you are in the upper trigram.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I definitely want to come back to this because I see it as kind of the balance between not being naive, but also not being unjust by judging somebody before they ought to be judged. So there's a
Yes.
balance. So that's a wisdom, but that's also being just in your interaction with them. So I think that that's kind of where I'm seeing this, and I think you can see that as well. And it comes out in Joy's translation more so, is that in 33, I believe her translation was ended with the word character.
Yeah.
And so the word character, instead of good qualities, it's don't admire strength, admire because of other good qualities, because of their character. So that would almost be, that you're admiring somebody for who they are, not the position they hold. And that's the way, and that's a little bit confusing to me, but because it's Confucius. But anyway, but nonetheless.
Maybe a last word, okay? Because Confucianism produced a lot of what I call clumsy nerds, okay? And I would say that those 4 paragraphs is promoting the fact that try not to be a clumsy nerd, okay? Because a lot of Confucianists repeat a little bit like robots, own those high principles, but they are completely incapable of being street smart or street wise. So I would say that we can say it in a very academic manner, but I say that the master here is winking and gave a very down-to-earth message and advice. Be centered in the upper trigram, of course, but try not to be a clumsy nerd. Because let's not forget that it was produced to create a statesman, okay? And it would be a tragedy if statesmen are clumsy nerds.
But okay, yeah, we can. I don't want to. I can come back to that because I actually have another comment about that too. But we'll go to Nick.
Yeah, thanks. First, apologies because I'm on a train, so I might fade out and fade in. But I just want to make a comment on the third passage we read. Because I agree with Jason. The translation that was on the screen that was read didn't quite carry the message. But more broadly, to comment on Penny's question, this passage, the 30, I think is number 34, it's so famous. It's drawn into the psyche of Chinese culture. The way to understand it will be, like say, take a classic Bible. There's a lot of passages in it, but a few passages are so famous, it becomes part of the basic moral disposition of a culture. So here it is really where you could say moral disposition could be culturally coded in the sense that passage 34 basically answer a basic moral question. What do you react to your neighbor who hits your left cheek? Do you turn to the right cheek, or do you hit back eye for eye, or tooth for tooth? And Confucius' answer is that, well, look, if you turn your left cheek, then how would you respond to people who treat you kindly? So therefore, you treat the guy who hit your left cheek with justice. And so that has been drawn into the basic Chinese culture as almost implicitly as a moral disposition. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I think that essentially what you're getting to is the idea of harmony, and I think that that's kind of actually echoed throughout the Analects. And so I think that this is definitely one of those passages that calls attention to that. But I think if you go through the Analects, you definitely see that it's about social harmony as one of the main key themes that I've seen. Anyway,
excuse me. Let me make a response to Nick's comment. And I think that's great comment. If we look at Old Testament and New Testament, right? Eye for eye, teeth for teeth. Okay, and the New Testament was a turn your cheek. Okay, so Confucius represent on the middle situation, right? Confucius doesn't want to turn your cheek, and Confucius doesn't say repay the complaint with complaint or repay the injury with injury. He talk about the uprightness. Of course, it's difficult to say what do you mean uprightness, but we can easily, well, generally we can say it's in between Old Testament and New Testament.
so if unless unless you have a comment, you want to keep going? Jason, let's go. Okay, what are the next passages?
Joseph?
Go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, I couldn't raise my hand fast enough.
Wouldn't be normal if you had.
I was just wondering, did anyone put in the chat what the word was that's being translated as uprightness or justice? I didn't remember hearing that. I might have missed it.
Sorry, yes, I did actually drop it into the chat. The word is ju, which it means straight in a very concrete sense, but it also has a connotation of being straightforward, frank, reasonable. Yeah, I put that in the chat a ways back. I was trying to bounce people at the same time, so I didn't get a chance to actually draw attention to it.
Thanks, Evan. And in the idea of the horse's virtue, I know that, Quan, you were saying that once you talk about the virtue, you're rising up into the upper trigram. But is it possible that this idea of virtue is linking the lower and the upper trigrams?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Both have to be integrated. Okay, because the lower trigram has to be developed. Okay, that I would call the training. But the education is for the upper trigram. But if you live only on the upper trigram, you are ghost. You're not embodied. So both have to be integrated, of course. But once you're in the upper trigram, you would connect the upper trigram with the lower trigram, of course.
And this is something I want to come back to, even from a Western perspective. Justice is only for the strong, which is a famous discussion with Socrates. Anyway,
Joseph, I'm sorry, I interrupt you again. Justice is for the strong, is the definition of Thrasymachos in the Republic, okay? But that definition is not true justice. That definition is a plutocratic definition, and it's the second layer of the mind development.
Correct.
So it's not a wrong definition, but it's a low definition.
Yeah, I think that's why I avoid to translate this word as justice, because in English itself, okay, just go to the Republic, okay, 10 books of Republic. That's all talk about what is justice, and at least they have many different opinion. And even in today's, we have a distributed justice, and we have different kinds of theory. So that's why I think we should avoid translate as justice, because I think the 直 it means the attitude, at least my understanding is the attitude of your response.
I definitely want to come back to this. So anyway, because anyway, so but we'll move on. So what is the next?
Let's do
30.
35, 36, and 37.
Okay.
You want
Joy,
me to- Okay, yes. 1435, the master say, no one understand me. Zigong said, what do you mean no one understands you? Confucius say, I have no resentment against heaven, no quarrel with men. I study from the bottom of a penetrate to the top. Who understands me? Heaven does. 1436. Gong Bo Liao had said bad things about Zilu to listen. Zifu Jingbo told Confucius about it, saying, Li Sun, Jingbao's teacher, is certainly being deceived by Gong Bo Liao, but I have enough power to drag his case out into the middle of the marketplace. Confucius say it is up to the fate as to when the way is going to function and when it isn't. What can Gong Bo Liao do about faith? Okay, 1437, the master say, a worthy becomes free of the world. Then he becomes free of his land. Then he becomes free of lust. Then he becomes free from language.
Thank you.
Joey, I think after that they have the master said. I'd like to hear what your translations.
Which one?
37.
Yeah, the master say a worthy becomes free of the world.
Free
Then
of the world.
The world, yeah.
And and after that, master
He
must have say something. It's like 7 people or something. There are somebody acting this way.
There's a yeah. Okay, so 1437.
Yeah.
Oh,
The very last.
The worthy avoid society. Is that the one? Next, they avoid service to particular state. Next, they leave when confronted with a disrespectful attitude.
Okay.
Next, they leave to avoid abusive words. There were 7 who did this.
Okay, 7. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Penny, would you mind reading the Leggy version?
Okay, verse 35. The master said, alas, there is no one that knows me. Zhugang said, what do you mean by thus saying that no one knows you? The master replied, I do not murmur against heaven. I do not grumble against men. My studies lie low and my penetration rises high. But there is heaven that knows me. Chapter 36. The Kong Po Liao, having slandered Su Lu to Chusun, Su Fu Jingpo informed Confucius of it, saying, our master is certainly led astray by the Kong Po Liao, but I have still power enough left to cut Liao off and expose his corpse in the market and in the court. The master said, if my principles are to advance, it is so ordered. If they are to fall to the ground, it is so ordered. What can the Kung Po Liao do where such ordering is concerned? Chapter 37. The master said, some men of worth retire from the world. Some retire from particular states. Some retire because of disrespectful looks. Some retire because of contradictory language. The master said, those who have done this are 7 men.
Thank you, Penny.
I'll let you put up your screen, Jason, but I'll read from mine. 1435. The master said, "People don't know me." Zagong said, "How do people not know you?" The master said, "I neither complain about heaven nor blame others. I study what's below and what's above. Heaven is the one who knows me." 36. Gongbo Liao filed an accusation against Zulu at the court of the Ji family. Zhi Fu Jibao reported to Confucius and said, "The mind of the master in the Ji family is confused by the words of Gongbo Liu. But by my power, I can still have Gongbo Liu publicly executed." The master said, "Will the Tao prevail or not? It's fated. Will the Tao diminish or not? It's fated. What can Gongbo Liu do about fate?" 37. The master said, "The worthy withdraw from the world. Next, they withdraw from their homeland. Next, they withdraw from people's appearances. Next, they withdraw from people's slanders." The master said, "There are 7 worthy people acting in this way."
Okay, so let's go to 35. Okay. Okay, I think it's Confucius talk about people don't know him since the book 1, chapter 1. Okay, he's not 人不知而不愠, not complain not complain when people not knowing him. And I kind of find out I listed here. Okay, book 1, chapter 1, 16, book 14, 30, book 14. He always talk about people don't know him. Okay, so then I think important 不怨天不尤人. I think that's the very important in the Confucius way. Okay, I neither complain about heaven nor blame on others. Okay, so he just do his way and don't complain other people because this guy made me do something, because my family was poor, so I cannot do that. My father was abusive, so I cannot do. No, he doesn't do this. Okay, he just do. And I study what's below to what's above. Okay, 下学而上达. This word is very difficult to translate, and some translate like penetrate to the heaven. I think it sounds strange, but I think the Confucius means he starts from the very basic to the very high. In Kwang's language, I think Kwang will agree with from different 6 trigram. Okay, from the bottom to the top, from low level to high level. I believe that's what he is talking about. The last talk about heaven is the one who knows me. It's also different way to interpretation. Probably only God's know me, if in our today's words. Okay. So we will come back to about how people know Confucius. The one big question would be, does Confucius' disciple know Confucius? Okay, that's another question. 36. Okay, so here is a bunch of them, but we can see that's the time during, I believe that's Confucius retired and then in the state of Lu. And remember, we have Ji, okay, Ji family. Okay, so Zilu, Confucius' disciple. Okay, so the Gongbo Liao, okay, he accused against Zilu, Confucius' disciple, in the court of Ji family. Okay, so there's a guy called Zifu Jingbo. Okay, this person, I just remember. Zifu Jingbo. Okay, just remember this person. I think it's in book 19. Okay, well, that'd be far away, but this person is always serve something to give the inside information to Confucius. Okay, so Zifu Jingbo told Confucius, okay, Gongbo Liao is file accusation against 子路. So the words here use 说. Okay, I think this one is kind of serious situation. It's not like just bad mouthing. Probably will cost 子路's life or something quite serious. And then he told Confucius, kind of insider. And then, but he's still powerful. He said, I can have Gongbo Liao executed. And the Confucius answer is, I think that among read, would the Tao prevail or not is fated. Would the Tao diminish or not is fated. What can Gongbo Liao do about fate? So I'm not very happy about my own translation as a fate, because the Chinese word called命. Okay, 命 in a way you should, because I translate as a fate, it sounds like a Confucius is a determinist. Okay, he believes the thing is fated, but it's not in this sense, because you will see Confucius always put his effort on that. He will let the heaven decide what's going on. So this fate is, I still not very sure what would be the best way to translate the Confucius meaning of fate. And this word also used in the Taoism, okay, especially in Zhuangzi, okay, use a lot for this word fate, but they have a different meaning. So in my opinion, Zhuangzi's fate is more kind of the life. That's the nature. That's what is. And the Confucius' fate is kind of like a teleology, or that's your destiny. It's not really predestinated or predetermined, but it has a teleology over there. That's the goal. Okay. So I still will welcome any suggestion about this translation, because I still looking for the right words for the word mean. Okay. 37. This one is difficult. Okay. So I think this one, let's look at this way. Talking about I use the word withdraw, be. Okay. The word here, be. Okay. And some translation means retire. Right? You will retire from the war, retire from or withdraw from the homeland, withdraw from people's appearance, people's bad attitude, withdraw from people's slander, kind of like Taoism, okay, like a Taoism thinking. Okay, if the country is bad, something wrong, I just withdraw from the war, withdraw from my homeland. It sounds Taoism teaching, but we need to distinguish the difference between Confucius withdrawing and Taoism withdrawing. Taoism withdraw, you just go back to the nature, you preserve your life. But Confucius withdraw could cost your life, okay? Because Confucius to withdraw, not to preserve your own life. Confucius withdraw to preserve the virtue, which is highest is 人. Okay, so a lot of time you withdraw, probably you will cost your life. That's your life is not Confucius' concern. Confucius' concern is more on the virtue, especially on 人. So that's the key difference between Confucius' attitude of withdraw and the Taoist attitude of withdraw. The last comment Confucius said, there were 7 worthy people acting this way. 作者欺人. Some pay attention on that, because there's some people talk about 欺人 means one person, his last name is 欺, okay, or 7. But there's a way people talk about that have 7 people. But it's hard to find out who is these 7 people. And one way common tradition interpretation is in the book 18. Confucius mentioned about 7 worthy people. 伯夷、叔齐、于仲、夷义、朱张、柳下惠, and 少年. And do they withdraw from the word? It is very hard. Okay, I don't know all the examples, but one thing for sure, it must include 伯夷、叔齐. Okay, Confucius mentioned about this brother many times because they were the aristocratic family loyal to Song dynasty, and when Zhou dynasty overturned Song dynasty, they just withdraw from their country. They stay in the Songyang mountain and starving to die. Okay, so that's an example. When Confucius withdraw from this world, or Confucian, when you practice Confucianism, withdraw from this world. It's not like I say bye-bye to the world and go to the nature world, enjoy my life, live a natural life. No, Confucius withdraw, you probably cost your life. Like Bo Yi, Su Qi, they withdraw from their country and stay in the mountain, refuse to eat the food which is provided by the new dynasty, then starving to die. Okay, so I think that's the difference here. So Amang.
Thank you, Jason. I really do like your translation. And I'll say, just for the record, I think that the problem with translation of fate isn't a problem of Chinese. I think the problem is the sort of connotations it carries in the English language. And I believe we're the ones making the error, not the actual term. The idea that something is fated being sort of a predestination out of your hands, in the hands of Greek goddesses who determine the course of the world, that's all sort of our preconceived luggage that comes with it. When Confucius is using a term like "mi," he's talking about the order, like the order in which the world will unfold, not because of some divine intervention, but more because of sort of a natural propensity, in the same way that, water built up behind a dam will eventually burst it. There's no divine order to this. It's just the way that the world unfolds, the order of things. Do enough of X and Y will be the result. Having said that, briefly, 35, I find this one funny because, as Jason points out, although he's saying people don't know me, and Zigong is saying, well, Master, that's not true. Then he says, like, no, I'm not one to complain. It's just heaven that needs to know me. But he'll revamp this complaint at least 5 times in the Analects, that people don't know him. And so it feels very disingenuous to me that Confucius didn't want recognition. He wanted recognition. He not only wanted recognition, he thought he was deserving of recognition, that he had merited recognition. And it was the fault of these mouth-breathing imbeciles in charge of their lands that they wouldn't regard him with the recognition that he deserved. But heaven would recognize him, the order that I just spoke of. And he wasn't wrong. The propensity of his thought to be carried through time was not some sort of divine intervention. It was the power of the ideas he had and the merit that they had to people the world over. I already talked about fate. I think that ties into the parable about Gongbo Liu and the Ji family, that the propensity of things to unfold as they're supposed to is our conception. The propensity of things to unfold as they must because of conditions is the Tao that he is speaking of. And in this, he and the Taoist are not so far apart. Then lastly, when he's talking about withdrawal and the idea of hermitage, Jason nails this, the idea that there is an honorable way to do this and there is a selfish way to do this. And the honorable way to do this should be somewhat shamed by the fact that you've failed the world to be in an order as such that you can be meritorious in it. Whereas the Taoist version is, the world is the chaos that it is. Withdraw is just a reasonable way to focus on what can really be refined, what can really be cultivated, and that is just yourself. But there is a place and time for withdrawal, and even though it comes with, like I said, sort of a degree of consternation or shame or hangdoggedness about the fact that you're having to do it, it's more honorable to do that in a world that has lost its Tao than it is to try and rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. That's just a fool's errand.
Okay, we'll open it up for comments. I like that last comment a lot. Go ahead, Quan.
I want to go back to the first 135 when Confucius was complaining precisely that no one recognized him. It's very interesting because here we have the lower trigram and the upper trigram at the same time, because I'm very grateful to Jason having stressed the fact that it is an illustration of the hexagram with the lower trigram and the upper trigram. However, I would say that it's also the fact that is also a message of Confucius that it's okay to complain a little bit sometimes, okay? Because if you don't let an overture for the lower trigram, for the animal to complain a little bit from time to time, it would be too stifling and it would be unbearable, okay? Because we are people of flesh after all, and we have to give some space for that flesh. And it's true that Confucius was perfectly self-aware that he gave outstanding ideas, but the average people during his time, and to be frank, the average people in our times are not very enthusiastic for the upper trigram. So he was a little bit disappointed, of course, and he gave vent to that disappointment. And it is used by the scholars throughout Chinese history to give themselves permission to let the animal express himself from time to time. And I think it was very healthy, psychologically speaking. And the other way is about the word Ming precisely, okay? And I tend to agree with the fact that Ming here, and here is my own interpretation, fate has to be understood, I think, as the order, as the universal order. And once again, that universal order can be expressed by the 6 layers of the hexagram, okay? In the sense that when the Tao prevail, it is a matter of fate, in the sense that where is that person in his epistemological development, okay? And depending at the of the station at which he is in his epistemological development, he will take the event through the eyes of his epistemological development. Of course, someone at 2 will not react the same at 3 or at 4 or at 5 or at 6. So I tend to see that fate as more the universal order. And I want to mention too the interpretation of Professor Robert Eno. It's maybe only a sly way from Confucius to give an excuse, a vague answer, just to get rid of someone wanting to bring him into court intrigue. And sometimes you have to give a stupid answer or a dumb answer or a general answer, a vague answer to get rid of a courtier trying to bring you into some shenanigans. And I would say that it was quite skillful for him. And I want to come back to the fact that the wise man doesn't have to be clumsy. He can be streetwise and wise at the same time. I stop here.
Hey, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I'd like to add some more information on the 35. The master said that people don't know me, and then Zigong said, and the conversation between Zigong and master about this subject, which will move forward to book 18, I think. In book 18, I think somebody in the royal court talking about Zigong is better than Confucius. And the Zifu Jingbo, this person also bring this kind of gossip back to Confucius. And then Zigong's answer is, oh, nobody know Confucius. Okay, so that's another back, probably the same event. That's why Zigong and the Confucius had this kind of conversation about nobody know me or people know Confucius or not, because there's somebody in the royal court said Zigong is even better than Confucius, and the Zigong had to say, oh no, you don't know Confucius. I'm not sure he act out of humble or he really think you don't know Confucius. So that's coming.
I have a question about that I'd like to come back to. Especially the second part of that with that heaven knows me. It almost seems like that he's, I don't know, when I interpreted that, I looked at it as almost a connection with nature, like a connection with like a deeper spiritual understanding that he has, that nobody else can really recognize, that only heaven understands. So I don't know.
I would say this word heaven would be tian, the same Chinese word. In Confucius understanding and the Taoist understanding would be very different. In Taoist understanding, tian could mean nature, but in Confucius understanding, tian could be much higher, but not as high as Christian God. Okay, something there. Okay, up there. Okay, so it will be similar to God's known, something like this. So that's exactly the words, same word, tian, different.
Yeah, but the old man said in that paragraph that only God understands me. So he was implying that he was at the supreme state of epistemological development, and no one understands him because he's too high. Okay, and as I said, I believe him, but at the same time, he was expressing his disappointment. So he let the animal express himself too.
Nick probably have a different.
Yeah, Paul actually was first, but Nick, do you want to comment on this? If Paul if you don't mind waiting, Paul. Nick, do you want to comment on this?
No, but Paul, go ahead if it's on the same.
Well, it is on the same topic mostly, but you can put it on the list of things for later, Joe, if you want. But unlike the other passages, thank you, Nick. Unlike the other passages we talk about mostly, I kind of get on these other passages through the weeks a sense of what he's proposing as the guidepost. And I'm losing that here a bit in that I'll use a current example. A new book has come out by Mitt Romney called The Reckoning. And he was offered a job as Secretary of State. Well, he didn't actually end up getting offered the job because he wouldn't pledge allegiance to Trump, so he didn't offer him the job in the end. But in the book, it goes through the interactions. And the reckoning aspect of it is, because as you guys know who know the history of this recent history, Mitt Romney was virulently against Trump over and over before and after that. But he said to himself, well, man, as Secretary of State, I could be the one person who could do good here. And this passage is relevant to that. And this concept of fate is relevant to that. So I don't know how to think about these things from this passage. And any more discussion later or any further comments on it, I would appreciate.
So Nick is now back after having dropped off there for a minute. Nick, are you with us?
Yes, sorry.
Mm.
Pope, please, Pope, go ahead. I thought I'm right. This is
Yeah.
moving between base stations. So, yeah.
Paul spoke, and then we'll follow with Joy. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'll just quickly comment your question. It's very interesting, but I want to focus on the first part of the answer from Confucius, because that's the first part from Confucius. It has been taken up by the rest of the Chinese part saying of don't complain about the heaven, don't complain about the people, take it up onto yourself. So it has become such a popular chicken soup for the soul that people just use it in daily conversation without many times realizing it came from Confucius, but it has been, very, very element of the Chinese culture, the moral compass.
Yeah, actually, I just like to respond to Nick. Actually, there's a lot of words. So many times I forgot to mention. A lot of words are, a lot of phrases become like daily conversation now. All Chinese, all people speak Chinese, heard about this. 不怨天不 use all the time. Okay, but probably most of the people don't know it's from Confucius.
Thank you for that. Joy, please.
Okay, I just have a question too. Yeah, about 1437, the 闲事必事, 其次必地, 其次必色. So the B is like a withdrawal from Jason's translation. So I was wondering, for those 贤者, that means has a lot of good moral standard. People, if they withdraw from the society or world, so I was thinking, should we participate more? Or I'm just thinking about reacted to the poll was saying, are we going to withdraw from the society from a lot of right now chaos and many like a political issues? So if there's no any good moral standard in participation in the society and the politics, so there won't be any good influence to the people and to the world. So I'm thinking Confucius is telling us to withdraw more or just avoid. I think B probably in what I'm understanding is to avoid. Maybe, in another way, some chaos, some confrontation, some fighting or war. But I'm thinking, if those good moral and 贤者, those good virtual people participate more, the society, the world would be different. So I'm just like confusing, what we supposed to do, in learning this. So I like to hear, some point from the others.
Yeah, let me respond to Joey on this one. I think that's first about this word be, right? We in general in today's language we consider as avoid, but I think the original meaning is withdraw or stay away. Okay, that's the original meaning. Like in Taoism, religious Taoism, called be. Okay, you avoid eating rice, something like this. So that's one thing. Second thing I mentioned when I talk about this, I think that's very important. We should not see withdraw or avoid in Confucius language as Taoist withdraw, avoid, because Confucius withdraw, that means you already try your best, okay, and then you withdraw. And when you withdraw, the purpose is not to preserve your life. The purpose is preserve the virtue, which is ren, and from time to time may cost your life, like Bo Yi, Shu Qi, Confucius mentioned many times. They withdraw, okay, but they die, okay. So they refuse to eat, then they die. So that's kind of withdraw, which is different if we read Taoism, withdraw, they will be different. I withdraw, I quit my job, I go back to the nature, I sing a song, I make friends, I drink. That's the life. Okay, so that's different.
Thank you. So they still have very good impact, right? After they try and
Well, I think they try. That's why Confucius.
that's very good. Yeah, that's a very good explanation.
Sorry, could I?
Yeah, that's the different.
The train just stopped at the station, so I think I could communicate better. Then I'll let you let Joy's question here. It's very interesting. The way I read this this passage is read backwards. There's a hierarchy here. So if you read this passage backward,
Okay. I'm assuming he went out.
The signal is not good.
All right, yeah. It's an interesting question because I think that this, you know, is he retreating into himself? In order to kind of,
I think I'm gonna paraphrase. Nick can hop in when he gets connection and tell me if I'm wrong, but I heard what he was saying. And so when he talks about reading chapter 37 backwards, they withdraw from people's slander. They withdraw from people's attitudes or appearances. They withdraw from their homeland. They withdraw from the world. That's almost the order of operations I think he was going for, is that your first sort of indication things are off is if you are being slandered. Next would be if the world is sort of turned an unkind face towards you. Next would be to withdraw from your homeland. Maybe you can be effective from afar. Lastly would be to withdraw from the world where you no longer have any real impact. But one thing I'm going to add, since I took the floor, and I apologize for jumping the line, is an antiquated sense. We want to be very careful about presentism reflected back on Confucius' time. We have greater ways of impacting our society in a modern world, in a democratic society, where you can get. This was not true in a world with an emperor, with entrenched genealogies of heritable rule. Your ability to be impactful was almost equally in measure to how in favor you were with those people. And so if you were thrown out of favor, your impact was over one way or another. Trying to fight your way back to ingratiate yourself to them just to be able to have an impact was almost a craven act. And so in the words of the great sage, you got to know when to fold them.
That's right. Oh, go ahead, Quan.
Yeah. I would say that everything that has been said are excellent, but I would like to suggest a slight modification of interpretation, meaning that withdraw is not, I think that we can withdraw physically or withdraw from an official position, of course, and I am not against those interpretation, but maybe a withdraw is to withdraw our attention from those stuff, and it's more a mental development. Okay, and here I come back again to my obsession, the epistemological development, in the sense that you can be slandered, of course, but if you have a high epistemological development, you can withdraw your attention from those stuff and not be obsessed with those slanders, etc. And you would be capable to keep on what you have to do with the perfect balance in your mind. That's, I would suggest that. I stop here.
Thank you, Quan. Are there any other comments with these three passages? If not, we can keep moving along and actually come back to this a little bit. Paul, please.
Yeah, thanks for this great discussion. I want to summarize how I am coming out of it. That I'm reminded of the Right Stuff, the book where the test pilot plane crashes and the guy in the back ejected and the guy in the front stayed with the plane and they both lived. They both made the right decision. So you're sort of saying that if you combine all of these things, if you're going by the virtuous path, you might stay with a leader, stay very engaged. And that is, in that case, you're following the highest virtue. In other cases, you might withdraw. And that's following the highest virtue, which is why we can't come up with one formula. That's how I'm thinking about it. So just thought I'd put that in there.
No, thank you for that, Paul. I really appreciate that. Was that Chuck Yeager that did that? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Just needed that point of clarification. In a Confucius meetup. But anyway, with that, what are the next
So let's read the 37, 38, 39, and the 40. And then we have a 4 short paragraph we left for we will leave for next week, and then we will go to chapter 15 about book 15 next week.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I start 1438. Yeah.
38.
Okay. Zilu was staying at the outer stone gate of the capital of Chufu. The Molin guard said, "Where are you from?" Zilu answered, "I came from the place where Confucius is staying." The guard said, "Ah, the one who tries to do what cannot be done." Okay, 1439. Confucius was playing the chimes when in Wei. A man who passed by Confucius' door carrying a bucket said, "You really are determined. I can hear your playing of the chimes." After a bit, he said, "How stubborn you are playing like this. If no one understands, just stop. When the water is deep, just plunge in. When it's shallow, raise your skirt." Confucius said that would be decisive and not difficult. 1440, Zhi Zhang said, the book of history says, Gao Zong stayed in mourning for 3 years without speaking. Why did he do this? Confucius said, it need not be Gao Zong. The ancients were all like this. After the ruler died, all of the officials took orders from the minister of the state for 3 years.
Thank you, Joy. Henny, would you mind?
No, I can do that. Chapter 38. Zulu happening to pass the night in Shiman, the gatekeeper said to him, "Whom do you come from?" Zulu said, "From Mr. Kung." "It is he, is it not?" said the other, "who knows the impracticable nature of the times and yet will be doing in them." Chapter 39. The master was playing one day on a musical stone and Wei when a man carrying a straw basket passed the door of the house where Confucius was and said, "His heart is full who so beats the musical stone." A little while after, he added, "How contemptible is the one-idea obstinacy those sounds display. When one is taken no notice of, he has simply at once to give over his wish for public employment. Deep water must be crossed with the clothes on. Shallow water may be crossed with the clothes held up." The master said, "How determined is he in his purpose? But this is not difficult." Chapter 40. Su Gong said, "What is meant when the Shu says that Gao Sung, when observing the usual imperial mourning, was for 3 years without speaking?" The master said, "Why must Gao Sung be referred to as an example of this? The ancients all did so. When the sovereign died, the officers all attended to their several duties, taking instructions from the prime minister for 3 years.
Thank you, Penny. Now we'll go to Jason's translation.
All right. Book 14, verse 38. Zulu stayed the night at the stone gate. In the morning, the gatekeeper said, "Where are you coming from?" Zulu said, "From the school of Confucius." "Isn't he the one who knows what cannot be done and keeps doing it?" Verse 39. The master was striking a stone chime in the state of Wei. A man carrying a basket passed Confucius' house gate and said, "This is a full-hearted person who is striking the chime." Later he said, "How lowly and determined it sounds. If people don't know you, you can stop trying." Quoting the Book of Odes, "When it's deep, wade straight through. When it's shallow, lift your skirts." The master said, "It's my decision. It's not difficult at all." Chapter 40. Zizhang said, the Book of Documents said, when King Gao of Shang was mourning for his father, he didn't speak for 3 years. What does this mean? The master said, this did not necessarily apply only to King Gao of Shang. All the ancients did the same. When the king died, all the officials gathered and took their orders from the prime minister for 3 years.
Yep. Jason, you're on mute.
You're muted, Jason.
Okay, from 38, I think it's again, 石门, okay, and some translation translates 石门, but I translate by the meaning, stone gate, which is the capital of Qufu. Qufu is Confucius' hometown. In the morning, so he asked, the gatekeeper asked, where are you coming from? Come from Confucius, and Confucius, the school of Confucius, that's a group of people. So he said, isn't he the one who knows what cannot be done and keep doing it? So I think this one becomes 知其不可为而为之, become a common saying in the Chinese speaking world, okay, because you know you cannot change the world, but you still keep doing. I think before we talk about this, Confucius' attitude, okay, you just keep doing. So 39, I think that's also important, right? Confucius is stay in Wei, okay, and that he has a difficult time in Wei. He hoped he can get a job over there, I think, but turn out didn't get it. He probably bored. Okay, so he is playing music, use the storm chime, and the man carry a basket pass by. Okay, we can consider this one is not a regular person. It must be the Taoist hermit, right? He can hear what kind of mood, the state of mind can read from hearing the sound of chime, the music. Okay, he said how lowly determined it sounds, right? That he knows Confucius just playing the chime, and he knows Confucius is complaining or is, saying, people don't know me, this kind of thing. So he quote, okay, so of course, this is not the regular people, he's a Taoist hermit. He said, he quote from the Book of Odes, right? When it's deep, wade straight through. When it's shallow, lift up your skirt, right? So when you cross the water is not deep, then you lift up your skirt. Okay, so take off your shoes, walk through, you still can be dry. But if it's deep, who cares, right? Just walk through, it's going to be wet. That's he said. That should be the attitude. That's a very typical Taoist attitude, right? If you cannot do it, I don't care. Just, let it go. But Confucius' answer is very interesting. He said, 果哉谓之难矣. That's very difficult to translate, even in English, also even in Chinese. Because that's my understanding. Confucius say, it's a decision. It's my decision. Okay, it's not difficult at all. What he implied, I think, okay, he implied it's two different ways to decide, right? When the water is deep, you should try very hard to keep your clothes dry, or you just forget about it, just walk through. Either way, it's not that difficult, but the decision is difficult. Okay, I think that's Confucius said. So Confucius' response to this, the man carrying basket, to this Taoist hermit, tell him, okay, I already decide to do, I know what cannot do, but still keep doing. I already decide to go this way, in a way, Confucian way. Okay, so it's not that difficult as long as I make my decision. That's my understanding there. Chapter 14, okay, again, Gao Zhong is an ancient people who is, I think, the 700s earlier than Confucius, and then the during that time the ancient book. Okay, of course they don't read Analects, and they read ancient book, which is the book of oath and the book of document. Book document usually talk about different ritual. So here, Confucius is talking about not only the ancient people doing this way, and I think that's the source of the so-called 3 years mourning when your parents die. And then you can see in this case, even the emperor doesn't speak, okay, for 3 years. Okay, and I believe it doesn't mean he doesn't speak at all. He probably doesn't. Confucius probably means he doesn't appear in public speaking, because that means you are doing your business. Through the 1,000 years of Chinese history, so-called as long as you work for the government, if your parents die, you have to quit your job and go back to your hometown for 3 years. Okay. So you can think about a career, right? So you work for government, you have 2 parents, so assume they don't die at the same time. So you have 6 years, you have to stay in home and not working for the government. Okay. So that become a requirement for the minister. Thank you. I'm out.
Yeah, I actually kind of took a note from Nick on this and read these in a reverse order. And it seems a little clearer to me when you start from 40, where we're talking about a consummate lesson that came up in Confucius' teachings, that is that about the propriety of mourning for as long as it took for you to be a viable human being. Your parents invested 3 years into you to make sure you didn't die. You invest 3 years into their death to honor that investment. It's a balancing act, a recompense, a show of good faith for what they had done. So you make this effort to do something, even though the people for whom you were doing it for have passed. It seems to be unnecessary, but it is proper. And the fact that it seems unnecessary and proper carries into his conversation with the wandering Taoist, who says, when the river's, shallow, you just lift your skirts. But if it's deep, you're going to have to wade through. You can just stop. You don't have to keep trying to push this boulder up the hill. And Confucius' retort is, my decision. And it's not too much of a hardship for me. It's not too difficult. Or like Jason said, Gaozai, Moji Nani is hard to translate into English, but it basically does mean something to the effect of, yeah, my choice. It's not too difficult. It's not unbearable. And then you go back to 38, where you get the Confucian version of Sisyphus, where the person asks, isn't he the one who knows what can't be done and keeps trying to do it anyway, which we are told now is the definition of insanity. But in this case, it's a testament to the virtue of what Confucius' goal, his purpose is to push this boulder up the hill that will not ever reach the top of the hill, at least not in his lifetime. Like I said, take these in reverse order. To me, they become clearer. Taking them in the order they're written, it's almost a slow reveal. I've got this card, I've got this card sort of play that is supposed to have the punchline in your memory, if as it were. I just don't think most of us have the attention span for that any longer. But there is rhyme, reason, and method that it punctuates or ends with King Gao of Shang. All of Confucius' teachings are predicated on him being a transmitter, not an innovator, and that his lessons, his ideas that he is sharing with people are grounded in the ancient traditions of the Zhou dynasty, and even back maybe to, the Shang before the Zhou. Having that sort of, would be a sit-back, eye-opening moment for the average Chinese reader. For us, it packs no impact. But to read it from a traditional Chinese mindset and see, he's telling me that these ideas, this appearing obstinance, this unwavering focus on continuing towards what a proper goal, this goes back to the sage kings, to ancient times, and therefore must be honored. That would have more of an impact to somebody for whom traditionalism is as paramountly important to their epistemological structure as we have essentialism as paramount to what constitutes truth in a Western mindset.
Thank you, Mon. So now we'll go to Quan.
Okay, I would like to talk about the paragraph 1439. When the Taoist said that when it's deep, you wade straight through, and when it's shallow, you lift your skirts, it's a very nice poetic way to say, do what is natural. Okay, if it's deep, you don't have any choice. Your garments wouldn't be wet, but you go through. And then when it's shallow, you just lift your skirts. And Confucius said, and that's the translation by Professor Robert Eno, is it really so? There is nothing hard in that. Okay, so I would say that here it's true that it's the struggle, the clash between two representations of the world and between two school of thinking, what is the worthy actions in order to be truly human. When the master answered, there's nothing hard in that, in the sense that, of course, when it's really deep, of course, you will get wet anyway, obviously. If you want to go through the river or whatsoever. But there is a undertone, if I want to go back to the hexagram, that if when you reach to run, would correspond to the virtue of humanity and moderation and valor. Let's not forget that moderation of humanity and valor is not only in your behavior to others in society. Humanity and valor is also the exploration of the universe, creativity, inventivity, science, and technology. Okay, so here, my interpretation of the answer of Confucius, is it really so? There's nothing hard in that, in the sense that you can stay in your natural state, doing nothing, and not exploring the reality, and not inventing technology, and not creating science. Well, it's a very lowly life after all, but maybe there is more to the human state, and there's more to be explored, to be created, to be invented. That's my interpretation for that paragraph. What is humanity and what is valor versus the Confucianist perspective and the Taoist perspective. That's one. And two, the 40, just a small historical note, okay? Cao Zong here is the King Wu Ding, W-U-D-I-N-G of the Shang-Ying dynasty. He ruled between 1250 BCE and 1192 BCE. He was a really great sovereign, and he had one of his wives is quite well known by the archaeologists, and she's named Fu Hao, Fuhao, and they discover her tombs, and in her tombs there are a lot of exquisite and outstanding bronze vessels. So it's a small archaeological note here, and I stop here.
If does anybody else have a comment on any of these passages? If not, you know, I think about what actually Nick was referring to a little bit earlier with the idea of harmony, and how does, and my question is actually, how does number 40 relate to social harmony? Specifically the honoring of the dead. I can start to infer as to, you know, the idea of, you know, respecting what comes before you and understanding that as a way of maintaining social harmony. But is there anything deeper than that?
Well, I think that Aman gave the answer according to the Chinese perspective, okay? Because your parents gave you, took care of you during your first 3 years.
Right.
It's only a question of justice that you would devote the 3 of your years after the death, and it's the traditional explanation of the 3 years of mourning. And it's a question of justice. And because if your parent did not devote the 3 years to take care of you for your first 3 years, when you were truly vulnerable, it would be justice to devote also 3 of your years. And the ancient Chinese were very serious with that rule. And there were a lot of cases of ministers, of prime ministers, having caused havoc at court because they did not want to respect those 3 years of mourning precisely.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something deeper there. That and he covers that pretty closely in the earlier chapters. But he also lost his parents at 3, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yeah, but that rule existed centuries before him. Okay, he was born in 551, and King Gaozong ruled in 1250, and even that rule existed before King Gaozong. So that rule existed for 1,000 years before him.
Oh, Aman.
Yeah, I was going to echo what Quan said, but I wanted to amplify it a little. He's absolutely right that this has been the consummate practice of Chinese culture. It's in fact arguable that the one universal religion of Chinese people has been ancestry worship that goes back so far into the ancient history. It goes into prehistory. There are spiritual elements to it. There are many layers to it. In one sense, there were diviners who believed that these ancestors were who you could solicit guidance from. And that isn't as antiquated an idea as it sounds. Today, grave cleaning holiday is still the most universally recognized sort of ceremony that all Chinese of every ilk still participate in because it harkens back to this ancient idea. The metric of 3 years seems to have been at some ancient point a compromise, because there was actually a practice of eternal mourning that was expected from some people at some points, and it became realized this was untenable. You can't have everyone always in mourning indefinitely for someone they've lost. And so, okay, so was a year enough? Well, that doesn't seem to fit. 3 years became sort of a universal standard that everyone hewed to and carried through right up until Confucius' time. His justification for it, and the justification of Confucians coming after, was that this was the minimum amount of invested time to ensure you live. So it's the minimum amount of time you should invest in those who did live. But there are many other additional angles to this that drive right at the heart of one of the pillars of Chinese culture.
So Jason in there.
Yeah, I think we will stop here for today, and then we have the 4 more short. I don't think it makes sense to just rush to finish the last 4. So we will next week we will finish the last 4 chapters, and then we move on to book 15. Book 14 and book 15 both have over 40 chapters. So they're probably the 2 longest books in Confucius Analects. And then we have 5 more books after we finish book 15. Total have 20 books. But the rest is not that long. But the style difference, because there's each chapter is longer, and then really depends. The reading will be different. Less on the Confucius say something. There's a lot of historical background. So we will stop here. And it seems like everyone are interested in the 3 years. Morning.